Hello everyone, I'm Becky Goldsmith from Piece of Cake Designs, and I want to show you how to use the Essential Sandboard. When you open the package, remove the paper, but hold on to this because you may want to refer to this for other ideas about how to use the board. Now here's a tip from Linda. What she likes to do with any new sandboard, and I do too since I learned this tip from Linda, is even though this sandpaper is incredibly smooth, and what you'll find is this is the smoothest sandboard on the market today, what we like to do is take a second sheet of sandpaper and sand the sandpaper side of this board. It makes it just a little bit smoother to the touch, and it still grabs the fabric. Now, this makes a harsh noise, and so I'm going to turn the camera off while I buff this board. Now that my sandboard is even smoother, I'm going to show you how you can use this in hand applique, or piecing for that matter. Anytime you need to trace on fabric, certainly against a template, you want to use the sandboard because the sandpaper side of the board keeps the fabric from shifting as you trace around the template. So let me zoom the camera in here so that you can see more closely. So if I'm going to trace around this, just like that, notice that the fabric stays put. It's not shifting out of position as I use the pencil. I'm using my chalk pencil, which has a fairly thick point, but even if I'm using a smaller point, as you might find in these Soline pencils with the 9mm leads, you can still draw smoothly against the fabric. Now this is an applique template, but it could as easily be a template that you might use in piecing. So this is not strictly an applique tool. If you needed to get signatures, if you wanted to write on your fabric or do ink work, this is another good application for the sandpaper because you can write and the fabric stays put. And I could write with a darker ink pencil or marker. Let's write. Happy, because we are happy. All right, so anytime you need to write on fabric with a chalk pencil, with ink, with a stencil, if you're doing any sort of stenciling with paint, where you don't want the fabric to move, this is an excellent place to use this board. The other side of the sandboard is white with these pretty flowers in the corner. This is handy when you need a white surface to work on. You're not always at a table with a white surface, or if you're sitting in your chair at night, you might need a white surface to work on. One of the things that you might find useful is if you ever need to trace a design onto fabric and you need something white underneath it to make it easier to see the lines through the fabric. This is a really good feature of this side of the board and something to remember that you can use. Now the other thing is that this side, the white side, is smooth and it's slick, but it's not so slick that it slides around a lot, either on the table or on your lap. It tends to stay put really well. Now, one other way that I use the board when I'm appliquing is for pinning my pieces. I always put the background of my applique on the sandboard because the sandpaper keeps it from shifting as I'm maneuvering applique pieces into position. So I would place the overlay on top of the fabric, which is on top of my sandboard, and I have a piece prepared. I believe it's that leaf. No, it's this leaf up here. I would rotate this because I'm right-handed, and because I'm on the sandboard, I can easily shift the block without it getting all messed up while I'm working. So I would carefully get my overlay lined up. You could pin the overlay in position if you wanted to, but you don't always have to. Let me zoom this in just a little bit. Once your overlay is in position, and I've already finger pressed this applique piece, I would move this into position. And then I would not move this off of my sandboard to pin it. I would remove the overlay and pin with the fabric flat against the sandboard. Again, because it keeps everything from shifting. So I would begin pinning right against the sandpaper. Surprisingly enough, the sandpaper does not seem to dull my pins. So I would pin this whole piece. Now, what if you prefer to fuse your applique? I would still suggest that you would want to use the sandpaper because there are plenty of times that you need to draw or trace onto the fabric and you want to keep it from shifting while you're working. There are times when you might find yourself wanting to use glue on your applique. I don't often do that, but when I do, I tend to use the Soline glue pencil. And what I've found is that if you're using a glue pencil on the edge of your applique shape or on the edge of the fabric, and you don't have it on the sandboard, it can stretch that outer edge. So the beauty of using the glue pencil with the sandboard is that it keeps these edges from stretching and fraying out of shape. What you want to do is be careful to keep, whoops, I stuck to the fabric there, is be careful to keep the glue off of the sandboard. But even if you do get some glue on the sandboard, the glue will dry, and you can either brush it off with your hands or buff it off with more sandpaper or just ignore it because it's not really going to hurt anything. But if you were using glue, this might be the way you'd use it, tracing on the, or I'm sorry, putting the glue on the back side of the applique piece and then bending the seam allowance over it. So those are just a few of the more obvious ways that you can use your sandboard. I know that for myself, I use the sandboard in my lap every night when I'm sewing. I use it anytime I'm tracing on the fabric and designing a project. I would recommend that you might also want to look at the paper insert that came with the sandboard to see other ideas that you might find helpful in your own quilt making. I hope you enjoy this product. Oh, and before I forget, there is a free pattern either on patternspot.com or you can find it at Piece of Cake Designs. Look for the Piece of Cake Sandboard pouch pattern. I think you'll enjoy it. It works up. It's a perfect size for the sandboard to fit into. I hope you enjoy this. Happy stitching!